Hello, my friends. I'm very glad you're here, especially today because I have a very special presentation for you. I decided that I would write my own short story to this channel and read it for your pleasure. This makes me very nervous and a little angry. Let me explain. I'm nervous because, I'm laying myself out on the line here, inviting you into my own little world of stories. And as an introvert, that makes it kind of scary. What would the reaction be? Is it good enough? Do people want to hear more about the characters I create? Or are they indifferent? It makes it hard not knowing these answers. So here I am, presenting to you my very own detective story. I'm new to this genre, so I know I'll make mistakes, but I would really like to read your comments about what you thought, and if I should continue writing with my two main characters I introduce here. I can only get better, right? Now, the angry part. It has to do with my name. If you don't know yet, my name is Andrew Wakefield. If you try Googling it, you'll find a doctor with the same name. A not-so-good doctor that has been shunned by professionals and has even had his medical license taken away. I've had more than one person try to berate me online because they thought I was that bad doctor. I can assure you, I am not that doctor. The doctor that has hurt many, many people. All for money and an attempt at worldwide fame. Well, he got his fame, but not the way he was expecting. So I tried to come up with a nom de plume, a pen name that I would use for my writing until a friend I was talking to just shook her head and said, "Take your name back. Be you. Maybe you can bring back honor to your name instead of having it associated with an evil man." No, I wouldn't take it that far, but I kind of agreed with her. Take back my name and be me. Here I am, being me. Like if you like, and please comment to let me know what you think. Even subscribing lets me know you like what you hear. And for now, sit back, relax, and welcome to my imagination. The Third Option by Andrew Wakefield. "So why me?" she asked the young man on the other side of the small round table. "Interested in the lifestyle?" He smiled, though a little hesitantly. This was definitely a shy man trying to show more confidence than he usually had. According to his dating profile, he was barely old enough to be in the bar, a college student in his lower 20s, and apparently getting a little adventurous in his love life. "I don't look good in black," he replied quietly. "Oh, everybody looks good in black, honey," she said as she reached across the table and placed her thin, cold fingers with the matte black nail polish on top of his own hand. Her leather bustier slipped upward with the movement, pressing her fairly ample bosom into a tight squeeze. With her free hand, she subconsciously tucked one end of her lace shawl under the edge of the red puff-sleeved blouse she wore underneath, to hide a little of the unexpected flesh. She gave him a small smile that made her black lipstick glint slightly in the dim bar lights. The place was fairly empty at the moment, but it was one of her favorite hangouts. Besides, she knew Vanessa, the bartender, pretty well. In an hour, though, the crowd would pack in as the small tables were pulled back to make room for the dance floor, and the DJ fired up his equipment. She was usually gone by that time, but she wanted to see what this young man was about, and it was going to take a while to peel back his skin, as it were. The young man looked into the woman's eyes, trying to think of something to say. Nothing came to mind, except her eyes seemed different. She was looking at him like she was studying him, looking into his eyes and seeing what made him tick. It was almost an intrusion. Her eyes, with their slightly smudged makeup, staring. The hair on the back of his neck felt like they moved slightly, getting ready to stick up in fear. "Well," she said, "let's get the basics out of the way since our conversation seems a little dry at the moment." She leaned back in her chair after sliding her hand off the top of his. "As you know, my name is Sasha. And yours is Chad?" "Chase," he corrected. "Chase." Sasha extended her hand out in a limp handshake, which he took gently and then quickly released. "My apologies. I've never been very good with names," she lied. "Quite all right. It's nothing compared to what other people have called me." Sasha smiled at the small joke. "I'll try to get your name right." She paused for a moment. "So, Chase, let me ask you again. Why me?" Chase seemed to be at a loss for words, but Sasha knew why. She was different, unique. Maybe not original, but something people don't normally see in places like this, or dating apps for that matter. He was nervous, and she could see little beads of sweat start to form on his forehead. "Let me make this a little easier for you. Wait here." Sasha got up from the table, her black velvet knee-length skirt swishing slightly, and headed towards the bar. Chase couldn't help but look as she walked away. Spiderweb stockings and black 3-inch platform shoes completed the outfit. He found it compelling. The shoes made a clomping sound as she walked, but only slightly, not heavy footsteps like he originally expected. He looked down at his own attire and figured he was a bit underdressed. Tan slacks, always a good standby according to his father, and a blue button-down shirt that was slightly wrinkled. His original idea of trying to remain casual by wearing his beat-up Chuck Taylors seemed like a ridiculous idea by this time. He watched as Sasha conferred with the bartender for a moment, who looked his way before shrugging, and began pouring a drink in a large glass. Sasha stepped in front of her to hide what she was putting in it. They talked between the two of them for a moment before Sasha turned back around holding the large glass. Even from here, the drink it contained looked pretty mundane. This was exactly how she had convinced the local bartenders to make it. Boring looking, but still with a possibly hidden bite. Sasha made her way back to the table, slower this time, holding the glass like it might explode in her hands if it sloshed too much, and set it in front of Chase, being very careful not to jar it too much by gingerly placing it on the table with barely a sound. "This," she said as she rounded the table and returned to her seat, "is the Red Queen." Now that Chase could get a closer look, he could see that it only seemed to consist of 2 ingredients, even though the bartender seemed to take time to put it together. Maybe there was more to it than he thought. The bottom half of the drink was clear liquid. He dared say it was just water, but even from the slow movement of Sasha placing it on the table, he realized it was something a bit thicker in consistency. The top half was red in color, almost a bright red, but it stayed in its upper portion of the glass and didn't mix with the clear contents of the bottom. "You need to be careful with her," continued Sasha. "She can sneak up on you, and before you know it, you'll be doing her bidding, and not your own." Chase looked dubiously at the drink, but continued to hear Sasha out. She was staring at him with intense eyes, almost hypnotic, and she seemed very serious about it. A smirk played at the corners of his mouth, but the more he listened, the more serious it seemed, and the smirk disappeared completely. Sasha believed in it at least. He could tell. Respect it, and she'll respect you, Sasha continued. But never, and I mean never, turn your back on her. What's her purpose? Chase asked, while still eyeballing the glass and its contents. What's so special about her? He couldn't believe he was starting to be taken in on this fantasy, treating the drink on the table in front of him like it was a person. Normally it's for fun, but if you aren't careful, she shows you who you really are. Sasha dipped a pinky finger into the glass, just enough to barely touch the red liquid on top, before pulling it back to her and tasting it. She closed her eyes as the flavor draped itself over her tongue, savoring it. Chase liked how Sasha looked sitting back in her chair, eyes closed, sucking gently at the tip of her finger. But then he seized the glass again. A small tendril of red fluid had slipped into the clear portion of the drink, and seemed to move of its own accord before floating slowly back towards the top, mixing with the original portion it came from. He shook his head to try to clear it. There's something else going on here, isn't there? Curious? You've been waiting patiently like a good little boy. Why not give in and have a drink? And remember, don't turn your back on her. Yeah, you said, Chase said almost sarcastically. The sound of his voice behind that statement didn't ease her at all. Sasha could see that what she was saying was having the desired effect, but there was something else in there, something that wasn't sitting right. She debated ending the conversation right then and there to fess up about what she was really doing, but the nagging in the back of her head kept her going. And never let her take charge. You have to be on your guard, seriously, Sasha warned. A look of worry started to play on her face. But go ahead, drink her up. Enjoy her before she can enjoy you. Then tell me what you really are. Chase's hand reached for the glass and lifted it gently, examining the fine line separation of the clear to red concoction. Let's see. He took a sip, licked, and then smacked his lips. Tastes like... Shh, Sasha cut him off. She's trying to deceive you. Don't let her. Chase took a deeper swallow, then finished the large glass of ingredients in 3 more gulps. His world tilted slightly. Sasha's visage tightened and smoothed slightly in his eyes. She leaned in close to him and whispered, Now tell me, who are you? Are you the lover or the fighter? She paused for a moment, then added, or the killer. Chase tilted his head back, hoping it would clear his mind. His eyes strained against the lights on the ceiling, and in the background he could hear the people starting to arrive. The people. He laughed to himself, or thought he did. It was hard to say with his head going hazy. Sasha stayed in her chair as Chase stood slowly, making his way toward the DJ booth. She thought that maybe she could pull this through, calm him down, maybe even get him back on track. But she would have to watch him and see which path he had chosen to go down. The dance floor was crowded, and the music was blasting. The bass reverberated through his temples as he moved across the hard wood beneath him. He pushed, shoved, against the other people there. He had lost sight of Sasha, but didn't really care. It was the Red Queen he was courting now. His right hand ached suddenly. Looking at it, he noticed small scratches along the backside of his fingers. Small droplets of blood started to form along the deep parts of the abrasion, and a man sprawled on the floor in front of him. When Sasha saw Chase take a swing at one of the dancers on the floor, she had given up. He was a lost cause. The swing had gone wild, connecting with someone else close by. She thought perhaps Chase wasn't aiming, he just wanted to hit something. Surprisingly, he hadn't fallen down. As people scattered, he looked down at his hand, then used his other hand to squeeze at the scratches of the punch, allowing small droplets of blood to form across his knuckles. People had gone to the downed man to help him to his feet, as a few others gathered around Chase and started leading him towards the door. He broke free from them, though, and started his erratic dance once again, while the music continued. Sasha had gathered her things, paid her tab, and shook her head sorrowfully at the bartender. Vanessa looked back at her with worry, but allowed Sasha the freedom to move on without any explanation. The woman entered the night air, breathing deep. This is going to be a nightmare for him. But better I found out now than after we had hooked up, she thought. The cool air woke her slightly. By the time Chase had created his next phenomenal blunder, Sasha was already on her bus, approaching home. Chase suddenly tasted copper, not an entirely unpleasant taste, but a little out of the norm. His jaw hurt, probably from the wild smile he had on his face. He was enjoying this, whatever this was. Someone grabbed him by the collar, but he let them. He was more interested in the new taste. He ran the sleeve from his free arm over his mouth, and his wrinkled blue dress shirt then had a red streak down it, from elbow to cuff like a sloppily painted racing stripe. "Vroom, vroom," he said to the hand on his collar, and began laughing. Then the snap of cold air hit him. It didn't wake him, it just gave him strength. He gave serious thought about going back inside and playing some more with his new friends, but then he remembered something that hid in the back of his mind. He was supposed to meet someone tonight. A goth chick, as he recalled. From the dating app. She was here somewhere. He was determined to find her and began walking through the street lamp-lit streets. His pillow was comfortable. He didn't bother undressing, just threw himself onto the mattress and let sleep take over. The sun woke him, shining directly in through the slanted, bent, horizontal blinds of his apartment bedroom. It made his eyes hurt. A lot of things seemed odd. The scratches on the back of his right hand, blood clotted in small specks, the weird leftover taste of copper in his mouth, and the pain in his jaw. He ran his tongue over his teeth. All there, thankfully, and nothing broken. He was reluctant to turn the bathroom overhead light on, but he needed to check the damage. With a snap and a buzz, the light flickered on. He squinted against the light, but checking in the mirror told him that it wasn't as bad as he thought. A little blood at the corner of his mouth, a little dried spot under his nose, but once again, nothing broken. A bruise stood out on the left side of his jaw, though. He could live with that. A glass faded into his view for a moment. One over his eyes, yet transparent and ethereal. In the glass, a clear liquid on the bottom, and a bright red one on the top. He knew this drink. The Red Queen. And he yearned to meet her again. Better yet, he wanted to share it with someone. Sitting back on the edge of his bed, not noticing the pool of dried blood on his pillow, he took his cell phone and opened the dating app. So, why me? Chase had heard that question before recently. Where? When exactly? It nagged at him, but just as it was going to start bothering him, the friendly, smooth, and welcoming visitor came by. The Red Queen. Everything was for her right now. This dating app date was just a filler. The Red Queen was what this was all for, just for him to see her again, to experience her again. Last night, he gathered, was amazingly wild, and he wanted another night just like it. He knew it wasn't going to be exactly the same. This bar didn't have a dance floor, and there wasn't going to be a DJ. But those were just background noise. What? Chase stammered, slightly shocked. Why me? I'm sure a good-looking guy like yourself could get any woman off the app to meet for a drink. I'm nothing special. Oh, the Queen will make you special, he said to himself. Everyone is special. You just have to find it. And everyone is useful if they know what they're after. The young woman furrowed her eyebrows slightly, not quite following what he was saying. Okay, was pretty much all she could muster. Chase glanced at his watch and gave a quick gasp. He smiled. Oh, it's time. You're going to love this. I know I will. Wait here for a second. There wasn't really a time, but it was just a good excuse for him to get his new favorite drink. He went to the bartender and asked if he had ever heard of a Red Queen. You mean the Red Queen? The bartender asked, pulling out a couple bottles from the shelf behind him. Yeah, the special one. The bartender tilted his head back and looked down his nose at Chase, sizing him up. I'm familiar with it, he finally said. How do you know her, may I ask? Chase was getting a little annoyed, but kept it to himself. He needed to play it cool in order to get what he wanted. This was a special drink, and he wanted it made right. Last night, a woman had one made for me. The bartender stopped moving for a moment. Do you know what's in it? Look, I don't give a fuck what's in it. I need 2 of them, and I'd like them sooner rather than later. Chase let his anger slip a little, but the bartender only narrowed his eyes slightly. Go back to your table and I'll bring them out when they're ready. I'll need to see both you and your friend's ID. Chase dropped a $20 bill on the table and called it even, returning quickly to his table. He placed an easy smile on his face as his date turned to look at him. Nice, quiet place, she said while glancing over the rustic decor. I kind of like it. Do you come here a lot? To tell you the truth, this is the first time I've ever been here, but it's been recommended by a few of my friends. Chase gave his best smile even though his heart started pounding rapidly. Oh, the bartender wanted to see your ID before serving us. I'll run it up to him if you'd like. The woman dug through her purse and came out with her driver's license. Chase gingerly grabbed it and headed back to the bar, placing both hers and his identification on the counter for the bartender to look. The bartender was very carefully dripping some red liquid from a frosted plastic container down the length of a spoon, which was hanging just above the level of the clear liquid in the bottom of the glass. As he finished one drink, but not the other, he picked up the cards and looked them over carefully. Figures, college kids, he said to himself. Seeing they were both of drinking age, he handed the cards back to Chase and started pouring the finishing touch in the second glass, making a very slow show of it. This was what Sasha had taught him. It wasn't really necessary to do it this way, but part of the drink was the presentation. Make it look elaborate and time-consuming. He could have just tossed the ingredients into the glass together, but the mystique was how it worked, and the wait to get it. Chase palmed the cards and headed back to the table. He glanced long enough at the woman's to see her address and first name. Not that he needed the name at all, but now he could make her feel more at ease by calling her Elise instead of Hey You. He placed her ID on the table for her to take, gave his best smile, which seemed alien to him for some reason, and said, He's almost done. Drink should be here soon. I might as well let you know what to expect. Like a game, right? Elise looked at Chase a little sideways. A game, huh? In a way. Oh, here we are. The bartender carefully placed the drinks on the table, being careful not to let the ingredients merge. I'm assuming you know the rules, he said, more as a fact than a question. Yeah, one each, and that's it, Chase said. His mouth was already preparing to start in on his drink, but he knew he had to go through with the story for Elise before he could even start. I'll make it quick, he said as the bartender backed off and disappeared in the darkness around the bar. The words wanted to come out fast, faster than anything he had said in his life, but he restrained himself as best as possible. He knew there was a mystique behind it, and though he wanted this experience more for himself, he also wanted to see what Elise wanted to choose. This, he paused semi-dramatically, is the Red Queen. She knows things, and she wants to play. He knew he was making crap up, but he had to lead up to the final question. Jumping to the end wasn't going to get him what he wanted. Play? Elise asked. Play what? She wants to know you better, but you have to be very careful. She can play tricks. There he was, starting to get into the groove that Sasha had shown him the previous night. You need to respect her, and she'll respect you back. Pay attention to her, and never turn your back on her, because if you do, she'll take control of you. Chase paused. It was starting to slip a little. He had to get a grip on it again and lead up to the final question. What's so special about it? Elise asked while eyeing the drink from close to table level. She was slightly amazed at how the two levels of the drink were able to stay separated as they were. But she knew about viscosity. The thicker or heavier it is, the more likely it will flow to the bottom of the glass. But this appeared different. The heavier liquid was on the top, she had no doubt. Possibly surface tension. For an instant she imagined that red color was actually looking back at her, but pushed the image from her mind. Chase could see a little flinch from Elise as she broke the spell. Special? He asked shyly. Why, the Red Queen can show you who you really are. He paused. Drink up, Elise, and let's see who you really are. He took his drink and drank most of it in huge gulps. The bitter taste came first, then the tang in his mouth of the strong alcohol. Elise was a little more furtive. A few smaller drinks and she could taste a slightly bitter, yet sweet taste in her mouth. And when that was gone, she reached the hard bite of the clear liquid. Who am I? She inquired. Yes. Are you the lover, the fighter, or the killer? She took another deeper drink. It was only slightly chilled, but went down fairly smooth. She noticed Chase had a wide grin on his face, staring at her, his head lowered as his eyes stayed on hers. She didn't know the sensation yet, but to Chase, he had tilted, just like before. Elise started getting uncomfortable. He remembered he had grabbed her by the upper arm, telling her he wanted to dance, despite the fact there was no band or jukebox. He remembered pushing the bartender hard enough to make him trip and fall to the ground. He remembered feeling the cold air as it hit his face when he was forced outdoors. He remembered Elise. Yes, he remembered her. She wasn't there anymore. Somewhere between his memories she had gone, but he wasn't done with her yet. Her address, that he had discreetly memorized when handing her ID back to her, swam back into his mind. His smile deepened. Elise hadn't gone directly home. She really wanted to vent, and with her roommate out of town, she had to contact another good friend of hers from college. They had met up at another local bar, quiet yet brightly lit. Chase had given her the creeps and didn't want to risk having him sneak up on her. Her stomach was still a little topsy-turvy, but she was determined to finish the night drinking water. No more alcohol for her for the rest of the night. That queen drink was still giving her a slight headache, and she was damned if she didn't stay hydrated. It was only an additional half-hour or so before she went home. The safety of the small apartment she shared with her roommate made her comfortable. She unlocked her door and stepped inside the living room. The first thing she noticed was the cool breeze that was blowing through the place, then the broken glass by the sliding glass window. She was on the second floor. She thought it would be safer there. It was not. The door was pushed roughly away from her hand and slammed shut. Hiding behind it was Chase, his grin still plastered on his face like it was painted there. In his hand was an aluminum baseball bat. Elise recognized it as the one she kept by the door inside of her bedroom. The feeling of violation grew stronger knowing he had searched through her home. "Don't turn this lover into a fighter, Elise," Chance said, pointing the bat at her direction. "I know that's what you wanted, right?" "Right?" He jabbed the end of the bat into her chest, bringing pain to her sternum. The jabs were enough to knock her to the carpeted floor on the living room. Quickly he was on top of her, straddling her with the bat in one hand. He grabbed the collar of her blouse and tore it away. "You were supposed to go on the ride with me, Elise. We were going to have fun." His fingernails had dug into her skin at the neck and left long scratches from there and over her shoulder. Blood quickly started trickling out through the torn skin. "Ch was all Elise could muster through the sheer terror she was going through. "The Red Queen was going to show us how to have fun, Elise." "Then you would be mine, Elise." Chase punctured each word loud by picking her up from the collar and pushing her hard back onto the carpet, her head thumping heavily each time. The headache from the drink earlier hadn't gone away, and it was starting to get worse. "Is this what that drink does to people?" Elise thought faintly as she struggled to remain conscious. She started to feel something well up inside of her. Chase stood quickly, raising the baseball bat over his head like he was splitting wood for kindling, and brought it down fast towards Elise's head. She instinctively brought her left arm up to protect herself, and the bat shattered her elbow as it came down. It also deflected the remainder of the downswing, and the bat landed with a crunch on her collarbone. She heard the crack of the bone before she felt the pain, but the fear overrode all. Chase roared with frustration. Taking her chance, Elise scrambled back while his weight wasn't on her, rolling over on her right side, trying to spare additional pain on her left, and was able to skitter in an odd, almost animal way down the hall towards the bedrooms. Chase stood and watched her in confusion for a moment. Isn't she supposed to give up by now? At least give in? He began taking long strides towards her, but Elise was able to get inside her bedroom and slam the door closed. She thought frantically, "Phone! Phone! Where's my phone?" But she realized it was somewhere on the living room floor where she had dropped her purse. She did an awkward roll to her right and placed her back against the bedroom door just as Chase slammed into it for the first time. He rammed his shoulder against the door and felt the wood shudder under the impact. "Come on, Elise. You're bringing the fighter out. Is this what you want? This is your fault," Chase shouted before ramming his shoulder into the door again. Elise's headache was pounding as well, almost in counterpoint to Chase's attempts to break down her door. She squinted to try to ease it, but it simply wasn't going to be that easy. Not with Chase on the other side of the door, at least. She eyed the bedroom window. There was no way she'd be able to get out of it before Chase burst in swinging the aluminum bat. The bedroom door was closer, but it was a dead end. Once inside, she was never coming out. The pounding in her head was almost as painful as the pounding against the door. "You could have had the lover, Elise, but you've chosen to make me the fighter, and I'm going to fight you any way I can." Chase's voice sounded so close. The door shook again. And then her world tilted. The morning light shone in through the dirty windows of the police precinct. A few detectives were already in for the shift, and Everett Shaw was trying to give his best impression to the chief. Shaw sat at an old desk, pushed face to face with his partner so they could confer about cases as needed. But Shaw wasn't paying attention to his elder. Instead, he was running his fingers over the smooth leatherette texture of his new badge wallet. He flipped it open to show his partner the shiny new badge it contained. "Detective Shaw." He snapped it closed, then flipped it open again. "Detective Everett Shaw." He once again snapped it closed, and once again flipped it open. "Shaw. Everett Shaw." "Yeah, I remember my first detective badge," his partner, Frank Kyler, stated over the two desks. "They had badges way back in the olden days?" Shaw gave a wide, teasing smile to Frank. "Am I going to like having you as a partner, or is this a mistake?" Frank asked, lowering his gaze to some paperwork on his desk. Shaw flipped his badge wallet open again. "Just the facts, ma'am." A young man, perhaps in his late teens, stopped by the desk and handed Frank a plain tan folder with a few sheets of paper inside. He opened it and quickly read the contents. "Oh, hi, Detective Shaw. First day?" The question really didn't need to be asked, but Shaw nodded and extended his hand. The young man took and gave it a few shakes before letting go. "I'm Sam. I'm just a runner. If you need a coffee from the Swill Pond or Spotted Danish, just let me know and I'll run over and grab it for you." Shaw looked a little confused. "Swill?" "Yeah," the man replied, indicating an ancient table against the wall where an antique-looking coffee pot sat covered in grime and what looked like burnt coffee grounds. "I'd do a Starbucks run, but I've got to stay in the building. So that's your only option if you're stuck inside too." Sam started to walk away to give another folder to a team of detectives further on. "Nice meeting you. Welcome to Homicide. Oh, and Frank, Chief said now is best, to let the new guys see how interesting it can get." "Now?" "Oh, all right," Frank grunted as he stood. "Not overweight, just noisy joints," he'd explain later. "Come on, Shaw. Let's take a look at how bad things can get." "Oh, cool. Let's go." Shaw grabbed his hat and coat, but only made it a few steps before Frank stopped him. "Leave the fedora here." Shaw sheepishly took the hat off and tossed it on his desk. A short walk to the elevator, grabbed keys to a car assigned to them, and a 10-minute drive brought them to an average, ordinary-looking apartment complex. A uniformed officer approached them as they parked as close as they could. Active, booties and gloves, purpose still inside but not reactive, so should be safe to enter to get a feel for what's going on. Frank opened the trunk of the car and grabbed blue paper booties and blue nitrile gloves for them to don when they got closer to the scene. Shaw took a few steps towards the complex and stopped. He noticed the police line tape across not only the stairs that led up, but the sliding glass patio door on the second floor as well. Inside, someone is dead, he thought to himself. Images of what the scene would look like floated through his mind. And when he walked up the steps and entered the apartment, it was nothing like he imagined. It was clean. Well, almost clean. Frank grabbed him by the upper arm to stop him. "Booties and gloves, newbie," he said, and helped Shaw with his balance while he slipped the paper booties over his shoes and drew on the gloves. "Probably for the best not to touch anything at all. Let the beat and forensics handle that stuff. Take a look around, make notes, whatever, but don't touch anything." On the floor were the numbered plastic tents used to mark things of note. The only ones in the living room were 3 that marked 2 small spots of blood and a piece of torn cloth crumpled on the floor. He could smell something, though, that sharp, overpowering copper scent. He couldn't understand how a small spot of blood could give off that strong an odor. But then he looked up the hallway and knew there was something more. Something much, much more. At the end of the hallway was a completely shattered door frame, pulled out from the wall. The door that should have been attached to it was nowhere to be seen. Probably inside that room, he thought. He watched his steps carefully, making sure his booties only touched clean carpet. The smell was getting stronger the closer he got to the room ahead. As he got closer, he noticed that the room seemed to have a red decor. As he reached the doorframe, his stomach tried to empty out. He successfully held back his breakfast. The room didn't have a red decor. The room was pretty much covered in blood. It dripped down the walls. It made the floor sticky, and the bed had been completely drenched in it. On one side of the bed a body lay, more a tangled heap than a recognizable body-like form. Its head had been beaten in, and the arms and legs bent at impossible angles. Definitely multiple fractures, but he'll have the coroner make notes on those. There were 3 uniformed officers in one corner of the room, their backs to him. They were looking at something on the floor. One squatted down and pulled something from the corner and pushed it away from him. Shaw could see it was an aluminum baseball bat soaked in blood from end to end. That's when he started hearing the mumbling. "Red Queen." What? He didn't understand. Go ask Alice, I guess. "Lover," was the only thing he understood that came from the next slow, mushed-up sounding words coming from the corner. He looked towards the bed. The bloody body lay motionless. "Fighter." He was able to pick that word out from the jumbled voice next. One of the officers had removed his handcuffs from the leather pouch on his belt and was starting to put them on the perp. "Killer. I'm the killer." The officers brought the killer to their feet, and for the first time, Shaw saw the long blonde hair, matted and streaked with blood, completely drenched with crimson. A young woman that allegedly, he was careful to always add that word to his meanderings, killed the young man on the bed. The woman's clothing was so wet and sticky from the congealing blood that Shaw thought he could make out a floral pattern on her dress, torn at the shoulder, but couldn't be absolutely sure. She had dried blood that came from the right side of her face, possibly a broken jaw, but definitely a shattered left arm. She seemed unfazed from the pain. The way that arm twisted and swung while being led from the room in cuffs made Shaw's bile rise. Arms were not supposed to bend that way. As the officers returned to scanning over the room, Shaw took a tentative step forward, the mangled body on the bed, no shirt, but what can be assumed to be tan-colored slacks, with all limbs bent unnaturally. The bile rose some more, but he was able to gain control of it again. The sound of Frank clearing his throat took his attention away from the scene temporarily. "No touchy, remember that," Frank said sternly. "But," Shaw started. "No buts. If you want something, go ask forensics. You'll need pictures to make sure where everything is, too, and they can retrieve what you need." Shaw looked over at the body as well. "What are you looking at?" "Something in his pocket. Looks like his cell or wallet. Not sure in this mess." Frank waved over at the woman taking pictures of every little thing in the room. She approached wordlessly. "Get pictures of the body yet?" "As much as I can without moving him," she replied. Frank thought for a moment. "Just to be sure, take a couple more of his back pocket, where that lump is. Cell phone, maybe." Without a word, she nodded and snapped a few pictures of the area on the body in question, before moving back to her previous location to pick up where she left off. "Now, let's see. Who's here?" Frank looked around the room and down the hall back towards the living room. He shouted down the hall, "Hey, Bill! You here?" A slightly muffled Yeah, greeted him from near the front door, and the man presumably named Bill approached. What's up? Could you get that, whatever it is, out of this guy's back pocket? We're hoping it'll give us some information to go on, said Frank. Yeah, no problem. With a deft hand, he pinched the item with the smallest possible amount of force and slid it free from the back pocket of Chase's dead form. It was a cell phone, and except for the top edge coated in thick, sticky blood, it was for the most part clean. Bill dropped the phone on the cleanest spot on the bed he could find and asked if they needed anything else. I don't think so. This is a pretty good start. Thanks, Frank finished. Turning to Shaw, he raised an eyebrow. How are you about breaking protocol? I know nothing, Shaw said emotionlessly. Good boy. Frank clicked the side button of the phone and it lit up. It was immediately evident what they were looking at. Even I know that you should lock your phone, Shaw muttered. The guy wasn't the smartest, was he? The screen that greeted them was a picture of the young woman who had been led out in handcuffs just a few minutes prior. They carefully scrolled through the screen. Shaw spoke as if narrating. Elise Kavanaugh, college student, single, looking for love, pretty normal and harmless profile. They read through the texts sent between the two. Chase Steiner. They met up late last night at the bistro bar. That's only about a dozen blocks from here. He said he wanted to show her something. From the looks of it, that was their first meeting ever. No idea how this exploded the way it did. An earlier text was unread from another user in the dating app, saying, Yeah, I don't think we're a match. Sorry, bud. Hopefully the Queen treats you well. It was signed Sasha Nacht. I'll bet you it's not her real name, Shaw said. The mention of the Queen, kind of offhandedly, seemed like too much of a coincidence with Lisa's mutterings. He tapped the tiny picture attached to the username and a full-screen photo opened. Black hair, black mascara, black lipstick, black spiked collar. The picture couldn't have been more goth. Switching back and forth between Sasha and Elise's picture was like night and day. Elise was the blonde, bright-eyed, fair-skinned college student that wore bright colors and little makeup. And then there was Sasha, dark, dark, dark. Well, pretty much dark everything. There was something else about her. Something about her eyes. Take an evidence bag and take the photo outside. Try to get a hold of his most recent contacts. Once you get a bite, seal it up and take it to the precinct, Frank said matter-of-factly. We'll try to get a jump on what happened before they seal everything up tighter than a frog's ass. I'm on it, Shaw replied before heading out to the car. Once there, waiting for Frank to join him when he was done doing whatever he was doing, took a couple of screenshots and sent them to his own phone. He was thankful he still had the blue gloves on, even though the phone was still pretty blood-free. He then looked at the messages again and clicked the respond button next to Sasha's last text. What to say? Shaw wasn't sure, but he might as well be as forthwith as possible. He tried his best to be succinct. Miss Nacht, this is not Chase. My name is Detective Shaw with the police department. There has been an incident that I wish to talk to you about. Would it be possible for you to come to the downtown station for an interview? There was hardly a wait when a reply came. I probably wouldn't feel comfortable there. How about the carriage off of Halsey? I can catch a bus and be there in 20 minutes. I think I know what this is about, and that would be a better place to explain things. But if this is Chase, I'll be leaving before you even notice me. The carriage on Halsey, 20 minutes. I'll be waiting. Thank you. He didn't know if he had to add anything, so he left it at that and went back into the apartment after sealing the phone in the evidence bag. "Hey, Frank, can you give me a ride to the carriage out on Halsey?" "A little too early for a drink, buddy," joked Frank. "No, I'm meeting up with this Sasha person there. I'm hoping she has something good for us." Frank dug the keys out of his pocket and tossed them to Shaw. "Take the car. I'll get a ride with a uniform when I'm done here. Take copious notes and let me know what turns up." "Will do," Shaw said before returning to the car. The drive only took 10 minutes, so he waited outside for a few, trying to gather his thoughts about what to ask. How did she know Chase? Did she know Elise? And the most important one that kept nagging at him: who is the Red Queen? After a short while, Shaw climbed out of the car and headed inside. The place was fairly sparse, but well lit and comfortable looking. He approached the bartender. "What you havin'?" Vanessa asked. Nothing for now. I'm looking for Sasha. She here?" Vanessa squinted her eyes at Shaw in an uncertain, accusatory way. "You don't seem the type. She usually goes younger. No offense, but who am I to judge, right? Anyway, she's not here. Good to know she's going to stop in, though. She had a rough night a couple of nights ago. Jerkwad being a jerkwad, you know? Who knows? Maybe older is what she needs." Shaw held a hand up. "No, it's not. Wait, a couple of nights ago?" He pulled his phone out from his breast pocket and flipped through a couple of pictures until he landed on the profile picture of Chase he had copied. Turning his screen toward Vanessa, he asked, "Is this the, jerkwad that met Sasha that night?" "Yeah," Vanessa said. "That's him. We wound up tossing him out after he started a fight with some of our customers. Sasha had already left him behind by that time. Oh, speaking of..." Vanessa looked up towards the door when a woman wearing jeans and a retro rock band t-shirt entered and looked around a bit before taking a seat at a small table facing the door. "That's Sasha?" Shaw wasn't quite sure. She looked rather different than the picture he had of her on his phone from the dating website. Her black hair tied back in a ponytail, her severe black eyeshadow shaped like wings were done in a smoky kind of look, and besides her different clothes, her choker and black lipstick were gone as well. "That's her. She's not prowling today, doesn't look like. She expecting you?" "Yeah, thanks." Shaw rapped his knuckles on the bar top twice, an old habit he picked up during his heavy drinking days when he would close out his conversation with whatever bartender that would listen. He casually walked up to the seated figure from directly in front of her so she could see him. "Sasha?" "Yes. Detective Shaw, is it?" She reached her hand across the table to offer a handshake. He took it lightly, shook it, and took a seat directly across from her. "What can I help you with, Detective?" Sasha asked, her voice soft to match the quiet daylight patronage of the bar. "I don't know if I can help, but it sounded like you wanted to pick my brain for a while, though I should tell you right off that I'm usually the one picking brains." Shaw gave a slightly confused look at her. "I don't think I'm following." "I have a degree in psychology, though I currently don't practice. I use it to kind of get inside my dates' heads to see what kind of person they are. If I like them, the better chance." "The better chance for what?" Sasha lowered her head for a moment and looked at Shaw through her eyelashes, giving him a look of incredulity. "You really need to ask?" Her voice lowered. "Not that aspect of it. I mean, seeing inside their heads. I'd be interested in how you do that. But first things first." Shaw placed his phone flat on the table with the picture of Chase facing Sasha. Do you remember meeting this man? Sasha looked at the picture and sneered slightly. Yeah, 2 nights ago. Chase something, if I remember right. Sasha nodded. Why, he tried to pin something on me because I left him here hanging? Shaw ignored the question for now and showed Sasha the picture of the blonde woman. How about her? Sasha shook her head slowly. No. Nope, I don't think I've seen her around. Kinda cute, though. Could use a nose ring. A moment of shock reached her chest as she took a deep breath. Oh, crap. He didn't... No, Shaw interrupted. He didn't. She did. She furrowed her brow. What? She looks tiny in her profile picture. How could she pick a fight with someone twice her size? Why would she pick one? She was muttering something about a red queen when they took her away, said Shaw, hoping it would draw out more information. He was surprised with her response. No, that's not possible. I've never told anyone like her about that. She never should have heard about that. Sasha was feeling like the walls were starting to close in on her. Shaw saw her discomfort, but still wanted to hear more. What is the Red Queen? It's nothing, really. She was trying to tell the truth, but it kept coming out strange. It's a drink, nothing more. An idea sprung into her head. I can show him. Not give him over to it, but if he really wants to know, then I'll tell him everything. Wait here. I'll show you. Sasha stood and walked to the bar. She and the bartender had a quick conversation while Vanessa watched him carefully. She started to shake her head, but Sasha was pleading, and the bartender relented. She quickly began making the same drink she had made for the jerkwad 2 nights ago, this time not hiding it. 2 ingredients, that was all. A little pizzazz with a spoon and some red liquid from a plastic holder. Shaw knew the trick. It was just floating one ingredient on top of the other and not letting them mix. He used to have several like that when he was younger, but not anymore. No way. When the drink was finished, which only took a few minutes, Sasha carried it over to the table and sat down. This, she said plainly, is the Red Queen. There's a story behind it that helps get the effect you're looking for. And what effect was that? Shaw asked. The truth. Sasha looked at Shaw and laid it all out on the table for him. This is the way it goes. The Red Queen is played up as its own entity. Simply by calling it a she is enough, really. Then you tell the person that they have to watch their back when drinking her because she'll take control if they aren't careful, and show them how they really are. On and on the story goes. Just something to keep the person interested. Once they have the story, I tell them to drink it. Once they do, I ask them a simple question. Are you the lover or the fighter? And that's really about it. It's all psychological. There's nothing special about the drink at all. It's all story. And once it's in their head, I can find out what their real personality is like. Chase, for example, was a fighter. I didn't get far enough into him to find out why, but there was no doubt he was happy throwing punches. That's not who I was looking for. You want the lover, Shaw finished for her. And usually that's what I get, but not with him. So I left. I heard they tossed him to the curb that night. Probably deserved worse, but now someone has shown him he's not so tough. Especially a girl, Sasha chuckled. Then maybe that'll cool him down in the future. Shaw didn't want to get too far ahead of himself and looked at the drink some more. So what's in it? Taste it, Sasha offered. Shaw declined. I quit drinking a long time ago. It didn't agree with me, or my co-workers. And you don't have to worry about the red stuff. Sasha took one of the hollow coffee stirrers from a little container on the table and handed it to Shaw. No alcohol in the top part. Shaw took the straw, dipped it in the top portion of the glass, stopping the top of the straw, then let it drip on his tongue. It's... Really? And what's the clear part in the bottom? Vodka, Sasha said as a matter of fact. It's a Cape Cod. Vodka cran. Chilled, but served neat. Shaw looked back up at her. And people fall for it? I wouldn't say fall for it, she said, making air quotes. A better word would be believe. That's all you need, and then you can get them to reveal almost anything about themselves, including if they're a lover or fighter. Or killer, the detective interjected. Chase Steiner is dead. Everything came to a stop. The bar seemed to go completely silent as Sasha suddenly saw herself and Chase sitting at a table, very much like the one she and Detective Shaw were at. And she heard herself as if she were listening in through a radio, and the words were not good. She didn't remember it until Shaw brought it up, but she did. She did say that, didn't she? Lover, fighter, killer. Tears started to well up into her eyes. I didn't mean, she stammered. There was a mistake. The word just slipped in by mistake. Oh my God. Her body started shaking as her tears started to spill. She buried her head in her hands and her sobs turned into huge gasping breaths. No one was supposed to get hurt. But how? How? There are only assumptions right now, but I'd say he tried to get this Elise woman involved, and it backfired on him. Shaw took in the sight of Sasha pretty much collapsing into herself as she struggled to comprehend how a death had occurred because of her words. Of course, someone was dead. Somehow, from some strange part in the back of her mind, she had included the word killer in her story. It wasn't supposed to be there, but it was her fault. She was as responsible for the death of Chase as the woman named Elise, all because of words. It had to be because she had told Chase the story of the Red Queen. Then he screwed it up by telling it to Elise. She placed her hands flat on the table. I think I need to go. She was barely able to say those words without breaking down again. Shaw took out a business card belonging to his partner, his hadn't been printed yet, and wrote his name and number on the back. Sliding it to Sasha, she grabbed it in her fist, crumpling it, but hanging tight to it, and stood, not raising her view from the tabletop. This is all my fault, I know. If I hadn't... She couldn't complete her thought. She walked, head down, out into the afternoon sunlight. Barely watching for traffic, she crossed the street and waited at the covered bus stop. She never took her eyes off the ground. Shaw watched her leave, feeling a slight drowning feeling. He was sure Sasha wasn't in trouble, but she may need to be called as a witness if the case decides to look that far back in the story. His eyes traveled to the clear and red drink in front of him. He licked his lips, wanting the taste of it on his tongue. She stood motionless on the curb. Traffic passed. Tires hummed and buzzed across the asphalt. But her mind was hardly where she was. It was back in the bar, telling Chase over and over again, the killer, the killer, the killer. She could almost feel herself step into the young woman's body as the same thoughts echoed through her mind. Is that what drove her to kill Chase? Was he the fighter and she the killer? Or did he do something that pushed her into that killer roll. From the corner of her eyes, she saw the delivery van crest a small hill, traveling faster than it should have, but perhaps late to finishing its route. She waited, still staring at the concrete curb, and then she stepped forward into traffic. She got the wind knocked out of her, and her head hurt. There was an arm around her waist, and she knew there was some kind of ripping sound when she went flying. But it wasn't from the delivery van. Someone had pretty much tackled her. She rolled her eyes up to the sky, then turned her head to look at who had stopped her. The face was familiar. It had a concrete road rash across the cheek. A man had rushed her, wrapped an arm around her waist, and together they flew back onto the sidewalk. Her head collided against the walkway, and she saw stars for a moment. The ripping sound was the man's sport jacket sleeve, and his face had slid about a foot along the hard surface, blood slowly forming on the roughed-up spot on his cheek. He got up on his hands and knees, trying to catch his breath. "You can't!" He began coughing, spittle flying out from his mouth onto the ground. He spat once, twice. "You can't! Please! You can do more helping me." Another coughing fit rattled through him. God, fuck, I'm out of shape. Sasha focused. Yes, she knew this face. It was Detective Shaw. His face turned red while the coughing slowly subsided. "Please," he continued. Sasha propped herself up to a sitting position, her arms holding her up. "Fucker didn't even stop," she said, spying the van as it turned a corner blocks away. Shaw rolled onto his back, and Sasha shifted her weight to free an arm and punch him in the chest. He coughed a few more times. "You owe me dinner," was the only thing she could think of to say. "You have my number. Call me. We'll work out the details." She buried her head in her hands again, this time with a feeling of relief. More tears as well, with only a slow drop rolling down one cheek occasionally. Then the laughter came. It was uncontrolled. She had no idea what the humor was in the situation, but she couldn't help herself. And then the laughter turned to sobs once again. She laid down next to Shaw, who was still on the flat of his back, and placed her head on his shoulder as the involuntary convulsions shook her, crying and trying to catch her breath at the same time. They could both smell the dry, dusty smell of the concrete sidewalk below them. "Come on," said Shaw, raising to his feet and helping Sasha to hers as well. "Let me get you home." Sasha nodded and gave him her address. They rode silently, not a word spoken between them, until he had reached her apartment. "Are you going to be okay?" Shaw asked as he put the car in park. She nodded again, got out of the car, and walked to her home. Shaw followed the case. Nothing about Sasha was mentioned. It was pretty cut and dried. Chase had met Elise through the dating app, met her at the bar, stalked her, and broke into her apartment. She confessed to killing Chase with the baseball bat after he had broken her arm and collarbone. Everyone was impressed that a slight young woman with no training was able to defend herself so well, and she was released since it was obvious it was a case of self-defense. Detective Shaw agreed, and since Sasha was never mentioned, he had no reason to see her. As promised, he waited. It was 3 months after the whole thing was over with that he got a phone call about dinner.